Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society. My name is Kelly Crocker and I'm one of the co-senior ministers here. My pronouns are she and her, and today I'm joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and the worship team of Linda Warren and Daniel Carnes, as well as those volunteering as greeters, ushers, hospitality providers, lay ministers, and our sound tech. Special thanks and welcome to the members of our Solstice Harp Ensemble. Thank you all. At First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you're visiting us today, welcome. We're so very glad that you are with us. If you'd like more information about our activities and programs, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons. Karen Rose will be there and she would love to speak with you. We hope you'll be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately after service, also in the Commons. And today there is cake. So if you needed extra incentive to stick around today, there's cake. For families with young children, the formal classes of our Children's Religious Exploration program are in recess for the summer. However, we continue to offer our Message for All Ages. There's still childcare available for our young children. Our school-age children have the option of supervised play on the playground, along with the opportunities for crafts and other activities. And of course, everyone is welcome to stay here in the auditorium with us throughout the service. For those of you connecting virtually with us today, we're glad that you are with us as well. We hope that you'll be able to take a moment and watch the announcement slides after today's service to learn more about what's happening here at FUS. Now, as of July 1st, our new fiscal year has begun, but our annual pledge campaign, the free will giving that provides most of our financial support, which sustains this congregation, remains ongoing, of course. If you haven't yet made a commitment for this year, or if you're not quite sure if you have, I'm in that camp, so I will be talking with Cheryl after service today. Please join me in locating Cheryl and checking on our pledges. One of us hasn't been around lately, and so I am unsure of my own status. Please join me in the Commons with Cheryl after if you have questions. She let us know this week that we are 85% of the way to our goal for this coming year. So if you haven't yet made a pledge, join us in the Commons. And now I invite you to join us in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time, joining together once again in community. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers.
In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb.
Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. And we invite you now to rise in all the ways we do. Join us in our words of affirmation as we light our chalice. The chalice lit amongst us is a beacon of hope in a world in crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our being together. And we invite you now to take a moment to turn and greet those around you with signs of love and peace.
Well, friends, what a wonderful time it is to be together. Let's join our voices in singing hymn number 1000 in your teal hymnal, Morning Has Come. Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope shines upon each face. May it bring faith. well, I'd like to invite forward now anyone who would like to come up and join me for a story today. Hi there, Emmy. Good to see you. Good morning, good morning. Come on down. Thank you for joining me. So I have a story for you that comes from many years ago in Japan. And the first character, the first person we need to know about in this story is a merchant who was traveling from town to town selling cloth. Large rolled up bolts of cloth. That's the sort of fancy name for a bunch of cloth. So lots of different designs and patterns on this cloth. There were all sorts of colors, reds and greens and purples and blacks, all manner of different designs, cloth that you could use to make clothes out of, to make curtains for your house maybe, to make cloths you could put on like a table, napkins, bed sheets, all sorts of cloth. So, the merchant is traveling from place to place, has all this cloth, heavy cloth, that they're carrying on their back. Now, the second thing we need to know about in the story is actually the thing that we know about from the title of the story. Do you see the picture up there on the screen? And what is that? A Buddha. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, one of the great religious traditions of the world, the Buddha, if you say the Buddha, that means one particular person usually. The real human being who lived and died about 25-ish hundred years ago in northern India. A guy named Siddhartha Gautama is his name. But you may or may not know that actually there are many different Buddhas in Buddhism, because Buddha just means someone who has attained enlightenment, risen to the absolute highest level of wisdom and understanding that any human being can. And in that sense, there are many different Buddhas. At least there will be in the fullness of time. So is this a statue of the Buddha or just a Buddha? The answer is, I don't know. The story does not explain. And we might guess that either one is possible based on the idea that this is a story taking place several hundred years ago in Japan. So I don't know if it's the Buddha or a Buddha. But the point is, there was a statue of at least a Buddha, a big one, so big that it would take many, many, many people all working together in order to move it. Many times taller than me, many times broader than me, many times heavier than me. And on the course of this merchant's journey from one town to another, he came across this statue. And he was tired. So he thought, this seems like a good place to lie down and take a nap. And that's exactly what he did. Leaning up against the statue of the Buddha, he set his cloth down by the side of the road. He got nestled up, curled up. Maybe he used one of those pieces of cloth as a blanket, and he went to sleep. What do you think happened when he woke up? Any guesses? Oh, the cloth was gone. You got it in one guess. Yes. Or a horse. So now here we have this problem, right? He wakes up, all the cloth is gone. All those lovely bolts of cloth, the whole point of his journey, the whole way he was planning on making his money, all gone. And even if he did use one of those cloths as a blanket, I guess we don't know for sure, but maybe even that cloth was gone. Yes. Mm-hmm. I see. So your theory for where the cloth went is that it got trampled by a horse or a cart or something. It got caught up in the wheels. Okay, so that's your theory. So this merchant has a problem. He was depending on this cloth. It's not there anymore. And he doesn't know what happened to it, but boy, he sure needs it back. So he went and he told someone in authority. He told a judge what had happened. And so the judge said, well, I know who is to blame for this. Obviously, it's the statue of the Buddha. Statue of the Buddha was supposed to be protecting everybody, making people feel safe, watching over the community, ensuring the health and well-being of everyone around. And look what happened right underneath its nose. So the judge decreed that there would be a trial against the statue. And all these people had to work together. Remember, I told you it was a big statue, right? They had to work together to haul the statue into the court so that the trial could be held. Yes, Daniel? Oh, okay. You're trying to puzzle it out. Like, what's the mystery, right? Maybe a river carried the cloth away, or the wind. Okay. Yeah. So we have at least 3 competing theories now, besides the theory that it's the Buddha's fault, whatever happened, right? We have the theory that it was trampled, right, and carried away by a horse or a cart. The theory it was carried away by the water. The theory it could have been carried away by the wind. So word got around that the judge had decreed that there would be a trial against the statue, and the people who lived in the town thought that was very silly. Now, we got some agreement here, right? There's some people who are on board with this interpretation, but it was so silly that they kind of had to see it for themselves. You know, that thing was like, oh, that's a really silly, ridiculous idea. Maybe it makes you feel like you need to go check out how it's gonna look in practice. So the whole town turned out to the courtroom to see this trial, and as the proceedings opened, as the judge called everyone to order, there were still all kinds of people who were talking about what a silly thing this was, how it didn't make any sense, how it was probably the river that carried it away, or it was probably the wind, or it was probably a horse or a cart. They were all talking and exactly like that. They were asking questions exactly like that, and so the judge said, "Silence! I will have order in my courtroom. In fact, if you all think this is so funny, I am going to charge all of you a fine for talking." So now everybody's in trouble, right? And they've all got to pay this fine. And not only do they have to pay this fine, but the judge said, I won't even take it in money. You can't pay it in money. You're going to have to pay the fine to the court in cloth. Everyone in the village owes 1 piece of cloth. You have to come back here by tomorrow or you will be arrested. Oh, what? Yes. Oh, yes. Maybe you could negotiate and barter about the size of the cloth. I bet that the judge would be very receptive to that. So everyone in town, they didn't want to get arrested, they didn't want to go to jail, so they all brought a piece of cloth. And the judge looked at the pieces of cloth, and he brought the merchant over, and the merchant looked at the pieces of cloth, and you know what? One of them was one of the merchant's pieces of cloth. And so by that piece of evidence, they were able to determine who it was in the village who had actually taken all of the cloth and get it all back for the merchant and return all of the fined cloths as well to the villagers. So nobody was without a piece of cloth for their clothing or their curtains. Maybe. That is the story that I have for you. I thank you very much for your lively participation. I hope that now you will go to where you're going next. All right, so let us join together in song again. We're going to sing number 391 in the silver and gray hymnal, Voice Still and Small. 391. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears,
If you follow the course of a river from its headwaters to where it meets the sea, the chances are that it will not appear always to move at the same rate and speed. Where the river narrows or rocks or other obstructions render it particularly shallow, rapids form. Portions that are challenging or exciting or dangerous to navigate. But in between these may be found much slower portions where a boat or a swimmer might float along gently at a leisurely pace. Below the surface, however, the river still courses. It is only that here, its speed has been traded for breadth or depth. At this time, we reach such a portion of our own service when we are invited by the shape of this moment to slow down. So now, in order that we might drift more slowly and let speed give way to depth, let us spend this moment together, resting in reverent quiet.
Amen. This is a true story. It is something that really happened to someone that I know, someone who gave me permission to tell it to you. But I'm going to tell you this story as though it happened to you. I do this in order to invite you into the experience of it, but also because maybe, just maybe, there is someone among us today who will recognize this experience. So this is the way that it happened. Your eldest child had come home from school with a special packet of information. It was about a fundraiser for the school. There was a form to fill out and a plan to make for participating in it, convincing relatives and neighbors and people at church to buy things that are not strictly necessary, but serve a good cause. You thought that it was funny because you did that exact same fundraiser when you were in school, the same age as your child is now. You found yourself back in the same scene that you had been in before, only now you were the parent instead of the child. You could remember how grown up your own parents, the two most important adults in your life, seemed to be when you were that age. How wise, how in control, how full of authority. And thinking back across the 25 years or so between then and now, you realized something. My God, you understood something maybe for the first time. Your parents must have been just as lost then as you are now. They must have been just as uncertain about each new step of being a parent, just as capable of self-doubt. At 6 or 7 years old, you couldn't see it then, but through the eyes of adulthood and the experience of standing now where they were then, you can tell your parents were never so wise or supremely confident as your own mind made them out to be. They were muddling through life then, just like you sometimes feel you're doing now. Just like, well, could it be that everyone is just muddling through? That was not even the most striking thing about this experience, though. No, the grand conclusion that you drew from all of this, the crud, that really summed up the moment was as follows. The wisdom that a child imagines in her parent is not on its way to you. It's not just about to be received. That check is not in the mail. The great and blessed day when you'll have everything figured out is not coming. As human beings, we have an almost inescapable habit of creating hierarchies in our minds about the people around us, placing ourselves along a continuum with the folks that we look up to on one side of us, and the folks that we think ought to look up to us on the other side. Of course, for most of our peers and most strangers, and a lot of the people in the world, they're not really falling at one end or the other. Instead, they land right around where we place ourselves, and they move back and forth depending on the situation. You've got one friend that you would definitely go to for car advice, but would never consult about your marriage. You've got the cousin who's a nurse that you might ask overly forward questions about some minor medical worry, but for fashion advice, you will be looking elsewhere. But still, most of us, maybe even all of us, have people that we make exemplars of. The sort of people that we hope to be, that we wish we could be. And when the day comes that we realize that they are in any way more frail, more fragile, more imperfect than what we have imagined them to be, the fall can be terribly hard. Some of the clearest examples of this come from the realm of religion. History is littered with prophets, teachers, and messiahs who have lost their following once they are revealed to be fallible or out-and-out frauds. Nicholas of Cologne, in the year 1212, was a leader of what is sometimes called the Children's Crusade, a mass pilgrimage by poor people, many of them children, from Germany and France, seeking to convert the Muslim people of the Eastern Mediterranean to Christianity. His prediction that the sea would dry up to allow his followers across did not come to pass, and he eventually died crossing the Alps. 400 years later, a rabbi named Shabtai Tzvi rose to prominence claiming to be the Jewish Messiah. His campaign captured the spiritual imaginations of many Jews living under harsh conditions in Europe and the Middle East, and he caused such a stir that he was eventually summoned to the court of the Ottoman Sultan in what is today Turkey. The Sultan gave him 3 choices. First, to be executed forthwith. Second, to have his divine nature tested by a volley of arrows, which would, of course, all miss if he were truly the Messiah. or to renounce his claims of messiahship and convert to Islam. Zvi chose the third option. One farcical example of this trajectory comes from the sketch comedy show The Kids in the Hall. Kevin McDonald plays the only member of Ted's Church of the Very Bright Lights, an organization its founder insists is a church, not a cult. Kevin's character grows frustrated when no one on the street wants to take his pamphlets. Lord Savior Ted tries to reassure him that his doubts are a natural part of faith as he mixes up a boxed dinner of macaroni and cheese. As Ted launches into a tired recitation of his incredibly banal mission from God to, quote, "Tell him I said hi," an exasperated Kevin mouths along the words. It's a sort of magnification of anyone who has ever felt like they only ever hear the same story told over and over again in church. Ted's reassurances that his movement will grow with time no longer impress Kevin. It's been you and me for 6 years, Ted. The scene closes when Kevin renounces Ted and stalks out of their one-room apartment that serves as the church's headquarters. Would that false claims of spiritual authority and the misuse of religious office were ever as funny in actual practice. Instead, they are about as far from the comic as one can possibly go. It would be irresponsible for me to offer a message about the importance of tolerating and even appreciating flaws in the people we admire without making it clear that such space for imperfection must never excuse or justify the abuse of authority. The first few decades of the 21st century alone have seen scandals in virtually every modern religious movement based on clerical misconduct, from Zen Buddhism to Roman Catholicism to Judaism, and yes, Unitarian Universalism. By now, we ought to be keenly and sickeningly aware that any crime or betrayal by a religious leader, whether personal, financial, or sexual, not only does the damage of the crime itself, it not only diminishes the office of all clergy, it also damages the faith of those who look to that person for spiritual guidance. Such is true in virtually any such case of abuse or profound harm. Once our trust has been perverted and broken, it is terribly hard not to lose trust in others, in ourselves, and in the benevolence of the world we share. But the mundane imperfections in our teachers, the exemplars who manage to be mortal, as we all are, without exploiting anyone, these are not necessarily a barrier to our own needed learning. The Hindu mystic Ramakrishna told a story about a spiritual master named Tapobanna. One day, Tapobanna heard that his most devoted student had been seen walking across the river that divided the city as though it were solid ground. Tapobanna believed himself to be far above this student in wisdom and learning. In fact, he viewed his disciples' unswerving dedication to him as a sign of the student's limited faculties. Still, he had to know the secret of this powerful display. Tapobanna sought out his devotee and asked if the stories were true, that he had developed a habit of walking across the surface of the river each day and night. The student declared that they were, and offered all credit for the miracle to his master. With each step, he explained, I recited your blessed name, and this is what upheld me. From this, Taprobana decided that he must have had spiritual powers of which even he was not aware. Surely whatever his student could accomplish by invoking his name, the master could achieve just as well. So he rushed to the riverbank and he set foot upon the water, and with profound concentration he recited his mantra, me, 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 and he sank. Alan Watts, a British mystic who helped to popularize Zen Buddhism in the West, offered a set of instructions for what he called the trickster guru, someone determined to fake their way as a religious teacher in order to help others attain real spiritual liberation. His advice is to be somewhat quiet and solitary, never ask questions, but provoke people into asking your advice. Command your students to perform odd exercises. Some should be merely difficult, and others should be impossible. Be sure to have about 30 or 40 different stages of progress worked out, and suggest that there are still some extremely high stages beyond even those. Insist on some special diet, but do not follow it yourself. To pull the whole thing off, you will need to be an utter and perfect skeptic, devoid of any superstition or even wonder or awe. Otherwise, some other spiritual confidence man might outwit you. But at the same time, you must find a way to believe your own hoax. It's the only way you'll ever find enough nerve to pull it off. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we have a tradition of turning towards, rather than away from, the imperfect in our teachers, our prophets, and our saints. At its best, this has allowed us to appreciate the beauty and the truth in a life without discarding it, just because life gets messy. During the Enlightenment, when the blossoming of the scientific method led to fresh questioning of the miracles attributed to Jesus, our spiritual ancestors chose to focus on his humanity as a source of inspiration. Rather than having to be perfect in an unquestionable, unapproachable way, Jesus could be understood as a wise teacher whose wisdom sometimes failed him. He could be seen as a prophet of peace whose anger at moments got the better of him. He could be understood as a messenger of hope who also struggled with his own uncertainty and despair. The lessons of his life weren't rendered mute by such an understanding of the man. Rather, they were made newly accessible, no longer bound up in a character so flawless as to seem alien. The words and actions described in the Gospels could now be read to offer a lofty, but still possible model for humanity to strive towards. And the lessons could be taken from his failings as well as his virtues. This same view applies equally to any spiritual teacher, any teacher of any sort, in fact, and to all those that we hold up as examples to ourselves of the lives that we aspire to lead. Be they parents or mentors, or persons of learning, passion, or experience, all are mortal. Be we, those parents, mentors, or persons of learning, passion, or experience. We too are mortal. And in that frailty is found our greatest blessing. We are never assured that we will get it all right. We may be certain, in fact, that we won't. But it is because we are able to fail that we are able to learn. We live in an age in which it has become a sort of sport to recite the moral failures of famous leaders and paragons of supposed virtue. There is a sort of cheap satisfaction for a certain cynical impulse within us to be found there, in the smashing of idols, the fracturing of a monument's feet of clay. Hence the roll call of philandering politicians, the salacious repetition of both rumors and proven facts about figures from Gandhi and King to Hawking and Einstein. William Wilson, the famous Bill W., who co-founded Alcoholics Anonymous, is said, perhaps apocryphally, to have asked for whiskey on his deathbed. Thoreau took breaks from living alone in his cabin to enjoy the company of friends and a home-cooked meal. It may be that the only public figure that history has proven unable to discredit by catching the scent of some hypocrisy or moral contradiction is Mr. Rogers. But all of this begs the question, so what? I do not mean to brush aside the wrong where wrong has been done. But the only true purpose for the smashing of idols is to make clear the greater truth, which they obscure. When our lives point others towards what is true and right, that cannot be diminished. It cannot be cut out from the record of days, no matter our own faults, however great they might be. Even if moral perfection could be accomplished, and friends, please don't hold your breath, it can never be attained by seeking only to do no wrong, preferring passivity to any mistake. Our highest obligation is instead to seek to do right, despite the limitations of our knowledge, wisdom, patience, and strength. To risk being wrong by having the courage to be as best we are able. Which returns us to that story that I began with at the start. I confess that I, like you, rarely feel so wise or so confident as my parents appeared to me when I was young. Like you, I have my moments of self-doubt, my hours, my days. Like you, there is a part of me that wishes for wisdom to arrive on a perfect schedule, fully formed and pure, to take away the guesswork of life. But what I know is that the total absence of doubt in one's self is the surest sign of a fraud. Either a fraud in the person who pretends such perfect confidence, or a fraud in us, projecting that quality onto someone else. The pretense of perfection is too great a weight to bear. It makes us either pretend that we are faultless and live in fear of being unmasked, or it leads us to wait around forever for the flawless guidance which is not coming. Instead, let us take solace and courage in the fallibility of all persons, first of all ourselves. It is only because we are capable of making mistakes that we are capable of learning to mend them.
Thank you. And I invite you now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which supports the ongoing work of our community. There are multiple ways to share your gifts. Baskets are being passed here in the room for cash or checks, and you'll see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You'll see the text to give information there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together. Each week we gather, carrying in our hearts the joys and the losses of our days. We hold our own pain and celebration and those of the ones we love. We share these here, knowing they are held gently in care and in support and love. Eleni asks us to light a candle of joy to celebrate the fact that as of Monday, she will be working as a hospice nurse once again. And we give our biggest congratulations to Eleni. And we light a candle for stronger health and well-being for Don's heart health and control of seizures for Rob. And we light a candle in celebration of the life of Klaus Jafke. We light a candle for all those who feel isolated by grief, by chronic pain, by mental illness, all others who are alone and lonely. To you we extend our compassionate hearts. We light a candle of ongoing lament for the violence which plagues our world. Fervently we yearn for peace here at home and around the globe. And we light a candle for all the joys and the sorrows, all the hopes and the dreams that remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. I invite you now to turn with me both inward and outward as we enter together into an attitude of meditation and prayer with these words from Susan Sahaki Brown. Day by day, month by month, year by year, we are confronted with all that we do not know, that we do not understand, that we do not grasp. Sometimes we are humbled by this knowledge and say, God, it is too wonderful for me to comprehend, but I know this universe is more grand and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. And I give thanks for the blessing of being here and seeing, hearing, experiencing, sensing all that is so wonderful around and in me. Sometimes we are saddened by this knowledge and say, "O merciful Spirit, we need to have the burden of hurt and suffering removed from us. Grant us the courage, the wisdom and fortitude to bear the pain of living. Send us those who will carry our burdens for a short while, and send us those who will comfort us with their healing words and thoughts. Always let me continue to search for the unknown in myself and in others. Blessed be, and amen."
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. Friends, let's sing together one more time. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit and join me in hymn number 158, Praise the Source of Faith and Learning, 158, the silver and gray hymnal. Praise the source of faith and learning that has sparked and stoked the mind with a passion for discerning how the world has been designed. Let the sense of wonder flowing from the wonders we survey of wisdom we acknowledge that our science and our art and the breath of human knowledge only partial truth impart. Far beyond our calculation lies a depth we cannot sound, where the purpose for creation and the pulse of life are found. May our faith redeem the blunder of believing that our thought has displaced the grounds for wonder which the ancient prophets taught. May our learning curb the error which unthinking faith can breed, lest we justify some terror with an antiquated creed. Praise for minds to probe the heavens, praise for strength to breathe the air, praise for all that beauty leavens, praise for silence, music, prayer, praise for justice and compassion, and for strangers, neighbors, friends, praise for hearts and lips to fashion, praise for love.
We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Blessed be, go in peace, and please be seated for the postlude.